The hallmark of expertise, according to Adam Grant, is no longer how much you know, it's how well you synthesize. And would everyone agree? Like in an era of information abundance, it's not about how much we know, it's how well we synthesize, which is an essential brain skill. And with that, I will kick it off to Sheba.
Yeah, so this is where we're going to bring everything that we discussed together. And as I said, please don't get comfortable in your chairs because we are going to be moving around a little bit as much as we are also going to be sitting down. I love this photo of stained glass. I don't know whether any of you have spent time like just thinking about the science between science of a stained glass. I'm married to a biophysicist, so I do hear a lot of details. But what's amazing about the stained glass is that it takes a single invisible light, right? And then it creates this beautiful pattern of colors. And it's through refraction, it's through diffraction, and it's through reflection. And that means that something that's as pure as information or knowledge is bent, broken, and what comes out of that brokenness is something that's beautiful. And today we've spent a lot of time together in this room really thinking and hearing, absorbing different kinds of information. And we've been applying it to different environments. What I'd love for us to do just for the next few minutes, and this is going to require all of you to speak up from different tables, but we talked about where we live, where we learn, where we work. And you have those stickies of ideas, so take a look at your ideas. I'd love for you to first get your ideas together on the table, and then hear from each one of you, not each one of you, sorry, each table, which idea actually pertains to something that's going to be built, a physical edifice. What is a policy? What requires like deep research insight? Maybe something that research is telling us or is prompting you to say, hey, I want to research that. I want to research the impact of that. Something that is prompting sustenance, resilience. Where should we be investing? Think about all these opportunities and strategies that we heard. Where should our investments be? How can we connect, whether it's technology or just the human connection? What is an idea that prompts that? And finally, what kind of awareness do we need to bring? So 2 minutes, get all your ideas together, and then raise your hand. If you find an idea, look at all those stickies. If you find an idea that pertains to this relates to the built environment. This is something that needs to happen in the building. Raise your hand, we'll bring a mic, and let's talk through very, very quickly different ways by which these strategies can actually be put into action. Yes, please bring them back to your table. You can bring them to the table or you can walk towards your notes. Well, we're going to go through all the ideas together, y'all. So I know that you all love your table mates, but this is the time where we're going to talk about it in the big room. So look at your ideas. Who has a clear idea out there pertaining to buildings? Raise your hand and you'll get a microphone. An idea specific to a building. Okay, I have Sarah's table. Go ahead.
My table, Rockstar table. Here we go. We had a lot of recurring themes, but things that pertain to buildings were things like acoustics, safety, access to natural light, and access to the outdoors. Also, control and flexibility and adaptability.
Nice. Yeah, they definitely pertain specifically to the buildings. So then let's think of policy. Do I have a table out there who has ideas about policy? What should we be doing from the regulations? Okay, Liz, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll add, I think it's related to some of the comments from building is enabling flexibility and autonomy, right? We can build the opportunity for flexibility and autonomy at the physical space, but if we're not enabling that and training people to use those spaces differently, then the design is not going to work. So the policy related to autonomy.
Yeah, policy related. All right.
Are you talking about internal policy or public policy?
The beauty is that you can talk about it in any way, and it'll work.
I was just clarifying. I didn't.
Oh, clarifying. Any other policies out there? Governance?
Following up here, similar is really the convertibility of space, evolvability of space. I think we need to think about not just the brick and mortar that is sustainable, but actually the interior of the building can evolve over time to adopt the purposes, because next generation looks different than our generation, which looked different from the previous generation, and the building needs to evolve with that. A building will live 40 years. We need the interior of the building to evolve for 40 years.
Yeah. What about research? Did you want to expound
now
on
I'm gonna go
policy?
back. Now that I know the rules, we can say anything.
The fact that there are no rules is the rule.
On the governance, I'm going to challenge this is a bunch of corporate leaders in this room. Make this a must-have, not a nice-to-have.
That's very well
Do you have
said,
the
yeah.
guts to raise your hand and say, we're going to do this, and it's a must-have, not a nice-to-have?
I love how that's worded. So what about research? What do we need to discover? Maybe the data is out there, but what are you curious about?
We need to discover how to help overcome the resistance to so many ideas. You know, it's resistance to change, but resistance to making sure that we can modify the environments, and what is it in our brain structures that is so resistant to change that we need to figure out how to more effectively overcome so that people are more adaptable. Can I do a +1000?
Yeah. Well, okay, so then let's move on to,
One more, Sheba.
oh, okay, sorry, I missed.
So I think we need research, and Steve, thank you for that challenge. And that wouldn't it be great if everyone did say it is something we must have, and that we did research on if we put our people first and we really cared about their brain health getting better over time, and we said as a company, as a school, as a hospital, our teams and staff, we see that they are, what we define as brain health is using your brain skills to thrive in your context. We can do the brainomics, the bottom line of that. We can do that. We need the research, but it's the best kind of research because it's deploying the benefits at the same time that we're getting the data. And we've got a group here that could be part of this to transform what's done. So it's kind of research, but it's really changing cultures from Tony's comments. Thank you for that, Tony. Yeah. But also just giving each person, changing the conversation between brain, I love the building brains versus brain drain. What if each one of you thought, I can have brain gain, and I can hardly wait to see each 6 months is my brain gained versus, oh, no, you're going to do what? So I want people to change the conversation on that your brain is the most dynamic organ and treat it more often than you do your teeth.
What about resilience? What's going to help us bounce back? Oh, another research point.
Actually, I just spoke on this a while back about policy and long-term. One, we talked about launching pilot projects across all sectors to determine the effects of the brain health, to actually have valid, reliable data that comes out of that. But I think these have to be very structured so that it would be generalizable, and we talked about that. The other thing is a comprehensive policy framework. You know, can we not create standards, much like we do with other things, whether it be like accreditation or certifications, and say these are the standards for brain health? How do we do that? And I think this would be a perfect environment to start developing those.
Standards, yes. Are we getting to resilience now?
I haven't validated this with my distinguished colleagues, but it's come up a few times, certain ways, which is, you know, this whole topic of the whole human approach and the connection between biology and neuroscience on one hand and society on the other. So between genes, epigenetics, and culture, including, how we're affected by these spaces. I think that it came up at lunch, Daniel Kahneman's work on, on thinking fast and slow, and his emphasis on cognitive science and our behavioral approaches. But a lot of that's been challenged now with the replication crisis, right? For the field in which he won the Nobel with his colleague Tversky. So I think that there is much more research needed on validating those approaches that are now newly in question. And it involves everything from the way we behave in our environments, but also to concrete things like circadian lighting, for example, parts of which have been questioned. So we really need to have hard evidence-based science in order to make the right decisions that are going to be durable, as was said.
I'm going to go on to invest because I feel like the last couple of answers did hit on the sustenance piece of it too. What should we be investing in? Investing in research. Where should we be putting our dollars? Yeah. I think Sandy was.
We need accreditation. So wouldn't it be great if companies could be certified in brain health? That there could be some type of recognition for. We have chosen to do this. That do a certification, and we're actually working with the University of Texas at Dallas to get a certification, so people, whatever their field they're working in, could do that. So think about a certification where people can get the skills and be certified, but where a workplace there becomes sort of a gold seal of approval that I'm a brain healthy workplace, building brains together.
That's fantastic. So on that note, what is the strategy that you heard today that could fuel connection? Whether it's, just the face-to-face human connection or a technology, digital connection, what did we hear?
So I had a comment for the previous one, which I think is just children. So I'm just going to say that. I think we need to invest in children. If we're waiting for adulthood to invest in brain health, it's too late. We really should, with what we know right now, we should be really thinking about it from the early ages. But just in terms of connection, I mean, our team really talked about that water cooler effect of serendipitous meetings. And we said, that can show up in so many different ways in the way that we think about it. Maybe water coolers are not prevalent anymore. Coffee stations are everywhere. They're getting more and more elaborate. But even meeting on the stairs as everyone's trying to get some steps in. So just thinking about different ways to engage that to allow for that serendipitous interaction.
Thank you so much. Rupali?
Follow up, and maybe that goes to your next question too, that I think when you're talking about how it translates to the building, are we boxing in our thinking when we are thinking in boxes? Right there. Because every time we think, like we talked about where we work, but we went by default to the workplace. We talked about where we learn, but we went by default to schools and universities. When we talked about live, we went by default. So I think to think outside the box, we have to stop designing boxes and then maybe really break them. Yeah, we need to break these boxes of our thinking and of our buildings and our typologies.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a place to start.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Go ahead.
There's two other points of connection that I thought everyone touched on. One is make it attractive to come to the workplace. People know that is where I go to connect. And HKS, the architects, y'all do a wonderful job. I love coming in. I have an hour drive each way. I look forward to that hour drive because I know where I'm gonna get. And then the other thing is the connection part is, and this goes to culture, and I think, the policies, the companies, make sure it's not just about the employee, make sure it's about their family. Because I think if we can connect beyond just our staff, make brain health a family affair, make the whole business a family. I think we've lost some of that, and the remote workplace has created friction points there, and I think we can claw some of that back.
Yeah, and what we are doing today is really important because, obviously we have to begin somewhere. I want to share this little snippet, so we might have to change the center of gravity of the room a little bit to come back to the center. Just it's a 1-minute video on the power of messaging and why it is important for us to listen and to read, and how everything, even what we did in our room together today, is going to have a huge exponential impact. I think like we started the day, I know that was Upali's desire, right? That 90 here becomes 90,000, very quickly. And of course, with the power of social media, it's going to be even more. But watch this.
I'm going to play a recording of people chanting, "That is embarrassing," 4 times. After the 4th time, write down what you hear. Interesting. Almost everyone here heard, "That is embarrassing." Okay, listen again and watch the screen. And when I cue you, write down what you hear. It's freaky, isn't it? You heard the same thing every single time. Our eyes and ears take in electrical signals which our brains interpret based on our expectations. We don't see reality. We see our reality.
We see our reality. And today, through all our discussions, in some way we are shaping our reality, right? So there is a good news and a bad news in both of that, and just what we heard. And the reason why we are going to spend intentionally this time, at least the next 30 minutes, synthesizing and capturing these ideas is that because perception and reality could be 2 different things, we only have so much of agency, and we're going to make the best of it. We're going to make the best of the agency that we have. So each of the tables is going to be assigned one environment, okay? And the first thing that we want to do is to actually trade some ideas. This is where, when I shared in the beginning of the day that, our speech bubbles are going to be important, it's because some of it is not going to be just for you. You're going to give it away. I don't know whether you've heard this story about a wheat farmer, an award-winning wheat farmer. There was a reporter who went to him and said, what is the secret of your success, right? Like, what do you do? And he said that in spring, he actually picks his seeds and he takes it to all his neighboring farms and gives them his seed. And he's the award winner, right? So the reporter was really curious. Why would you do that? Why would you give your best seed to your neighbor? Won't you just keep it so that you can keep winning the prize? And he was like, my farm is located in the direction of the wind, where the wind picks up, from all the neighboring fields. If they are struggling and they don't have the best seed this time around, eventually I'm going to get the bad seed. And for me, that's a lot like research, right? We can't hold on to our best ideas and want us to be under the spotlight. We have to give our best ideas away, because what we give away will eventually give the best back to us. So we're going to have an idea trade. Okay, so stand up. Look at all those stickies. If my math serves me right, you should technically have 60 stickies, because we had 20 stickies per facilitation, 3 facilitations, 60 stickies. So get up, and because I think we have some common themes going around, your goal is to just give away stickies. And how will we know that? Your colors are going to mingle, okay? If you're going to finish in your table having most of your colors, then you haven't been a very good giver. So stand up, and let me actually first assign your environment so that the reason why you have these environments is so that if you see an idea in your table that you think is going to benefit the learning table the most, you can go ahead and give it to them. I know that not all ideas are specific to an environment, but this is how we can give a little bit. So this is not in order. Okay, table number 1, Lindsay, your table is going to be move. Okay, table number 2, you're going to be play. Table number 3, you're going to be learn. Table number 4, I'm going to come back to you. Table number 5, you are work. Table number 6, you are heal. Table number 7, you are live. And that means table number 4, get sleep. And this was fascinating for me when our fearless leader said that, you know, like, yeah, you're going to have live, work, play, but I'd like you to also have sleep. And it is the fact that sleep does not always just happen at home. And how important sleep is to brain health. And this idea of, like, how can we improve our cognitive health where we sleep. So I'm going to go ahead and bring a blackboard to each of you for you to, like, collate your ideas. But meanwhile, stand up, you know yours. Go ahead and start giving some ideas away and getting some.
Does it matter what goes where?
No, it does.
It does.
It does.
On the screen.
Mostly just been on the All right, let me see. It's hard to see on the cooler.
top there points you to which table has which environment in case you're looking.
That's the We're like teaching the test here. Sorry about that.
It does feel like you're like Halloween. Yeah, what's that say? Makes more space for all this fun activity. I am collecting work. Excuse me. Yours is huge. Work idea.
back to your tables.
It's happening. I want to video the clip.
All right, everyone, it would be great if everyone comes back to your table because we're still in the heart of synthesis, okay? So if you don't mind coming back to your tables.
Okay, friends, I know we're having so much time, but please let's reconvene back at our tables so we can go on to the next exercise. So if you could sit down, please. Thank you. Sheba, what's next?
Well, the first thing is a request from an architect and urban designer. Please don't hide the buildings. We're building a city. I know the ideas are rich and hot, but let's make sure our buildings are seen. And so look back at your image, and then it was just so beautiful, like I've been picturing this idea in the mind, wondering how it's going to be when people exchange ideas. And I think a personal favorite moment was when no one was actually really exchanging. They just came and started plastering it here, right? Because that works for that environment. And that we have this, one of the reasons we wanted to get to know each other is because one of us can't do everything. Right? We need each other in order to move this forward. So the next step, if ever you've wondered, what is this guy? Right? One of the reasons we wanted to bring this out is to know that everything that we are doing is for the human experience. Right? Yes, we are making some grand gestures. We are changing policy. We might be changing our cities, but it is ultimately for the human experience. It's for that one human mind. So next step is for all of you to filter this a little bit. If you feel that all of these ideas pertain to your environment, you can keep it on. I know it looks beautiful, but you might want to filter it out. And as you think through that in your notepad, write the big idea. If you remember, this morning Sandy started with the 2-5-7 formula, right? And every table talk we talked about 2 key takeaways. We had five brain breaks, and now we're going to come up with 7 key ideas from the 7 tables. It's almost like we planned it, okay? So get back to your tables, look through these ideas, and see if you had to succinctly write a statement, which I'm going to borrow from what we heard, that we just can't be in the, this will be a nice to have, we must have, or we must do. So write a statement based on all these different strategies that we've heard. Write a statement in your notepad about your environment. If it is a play environment, we must blank so that blank. Okay, and that's going to be the big idea coming from each table.
keys won't get removed, right?
It won't get removed, yeah. Because I need them for the. All right, it's time to synthesize. So this is what we are going to do. Because this is something that's very important for us to listen to each other, we're going to wrap up what each of us have been discussing in our tables and pay attention as we have, hopefully you've identified a speaker for your tables. It can be the facilitator or anyone else who passionately wants to express your big idea. So we are going to start with table number 7 with Liv. And what we request from each of the tables is to first talk about some of the ideas that were exchanged. Before you talk about the big statement, just touch on, in the living environment, what were some of the big ideas at play, and then share your statement. I'm hoping you'll have a mic, yes.
Mike gets a mic.
Mike.
And to some of you, Mike. Nobody gets that, that's okay. We did live, and so I'm just going to pick a few of the ideas that we talked about: connection, building for purpose, nature, movement, connectivity, nature, connection. I mean, there was a pretty clear, I think, set of terms. And so we came up with a fairly broad statement that we all are very happy about. And it is, we must nourish people, place, and planet so we can thrive.
Wow. Drop that mic. Mike, you may now drop that mic.
All right, thank you.
All right, so we're going to go to table number 5, work. And I saw that there was a host of people who are running with their ideas to that table, because I think there was definitely a lot of unique insights. So Sarah, work.
Yes, we were overwhelmed by Post-its. And so, therefore, we're very verbose. So here's our statement. As leaders, we must create working environments that offer choice, flexibility, and are aligned with the natural world so that people find meaning and purpose, thrive, and are most productive.
Wow. That's great. Did you want to talk about any of the ideas that you had on your drawing?
I didn't even have time to kind of consider those, but whoops. Choice and control was actually, and yep.
We saw choice, control, participation, evolvability, the combination to support collaborative work, having space that felt personal for work, with separate, common, and shared spaces that can be adaptable. So,
excellent. All right, let's go to number 3, learn. If you can first talk about some of your key strategies and then hit on your big statement.
So some of the big ideas or the key strategies were centered around personalized learning or choice in learning, advocacy. There was a lot about advocacy, and design for physical space and purpose. Lifelong learning, that was another one. And so our statement is, we must commit to and design for lifelong learning so that we can extend our peak brain health span to match our well span. So right back to the beginning.
Nice. Brain span, well span. Wonderful. Number 6, heal. Just give us some of your big strategies and then your statement.
To be honest, we were more givers than receivers, so we win. As my team knows, it's always about how do we win.
Competition, yeah.
It was hard for us because we saw this in a couple of buckets, one through the providers in a healing environment and the others through the patient lens. So we saw comfort, time for personal time in the busy schedule. And then it turned into a conversation that worked outside the box. So we didn't stay in the box Upali, where the box was. And it morphed into something else, right? So we all started saying, it looked like people were having trouble pinning this for healing. So then we kind of had a confab and we came up with, we must The other reality was, the truth is healthcare workers understand they are very stressed, and that we don't understand how stressed they are. But I would say every industry we've talked to gives us the same message. We hear that from first responders, understandably. We hear that from world-renowned architecture firms. That's understandable. We hear that from professional sports organizations. Everyone's busy, everyone's stressed, so there's a commonality. But we have to listen, so we must listen to them so that we meet their needs through their lens. That's where we landed.
That's your statement. Wonderful, thank you. Clay.
So we were also, I think, more givers than receivers. Is it good now? Yeah. So we had different ideas, and some were more around space, like outdoors, actually play, things like that. And then some were more social, like community interactions. I think the kind of connecting ideas was that thinking about space beyond work and live. And also we saw a variety of different ways to imagine that, from tech-free zones to video games incorporated into our play spaces. So our statement is we must incorporate different kinds of play into our space so that we have joy and hopefully healthier brains.
Yeah, joy. That's wonderful, thank you. All right, move.
All right, team number 1, for a reason.
This is not a competition.
I'm just telling you our table number. Okay, so our team talked a lot about nature today, and then we got the word movement. And so I thought it was very fitting, and we had a lot of good conversation that honestly was a bit philosophical about movement. That movement is about change, and if we're not changing, then we're stagnant. And we're stagnant as human beings, we're stagnant as a culture and a community if we don't have movement inherently as part of our lifestyle. And unfortunately, the built environment is not designed for us to move. So we must prioritize life first. One of the things that we talked about is that human beings are part of the natural world. We are part of nature. It's not nature. Oh, thank you. Team number 1. It's not the built environment versus nature. It's all one ecosystem. And if we start thinking that way, beyond buildings, beyond built environment, really thinking outside the box, I think that movement can inherently be a part of the way that we live. So we must prioritize life first so that well-being is inherent to communities through movement.
Nice. That's awesome. So let's finish with sleep.
How topical. Okay, so sleep was a bit of an interesting kind of option, but I think we had some really creative conversations. Some of our stickies pertained to safety, comfort, slowing down ×3, thresholds and boundaries, daylight, outdoors, nature again. We also kind of talked about where does sleep play in our natural process of being. Talked about US culture and how we're work-driven as a culture, and rest almost is coming across as a version of resistance against our culture, and that we do need to rest and prioritize rest, but that's not built into how we kind of do things in this country, at least. So through all of that and our discussions around technology, digital detox, slowing down, our statement is we must be intentional with how we rest so that we can live fully, because we want to make sure it's relating to not just work, but how we do all these other things on the board. So.
So why did we do it this way, where you're actually focusing on these different environments? You know, there's a reason for that. It's really interesting that we're talking about the brain, of course, which is held by our shoulders. It's the top part of our body. But everything that we talked about today, starting from when we heard from the councilwomen about what the city is up to, you know, where does life happen in the city? Life happens in the city on the ground. It is where your feet touch the ground, where you can see your neighbor eye to eye. That's where life happens. That is what influences how you think, how you feel, how you thrive. It's those thresholds, and sometimes actually the spaces between buildings that allow you to unlock the best of potential. But it is also where, when certain decisions are not made correctly, much like what our team once said, you could find yourself stagnant. You could find yourself not having a sense of belonging or part of a bigger picture. But some of the best moments of humanity actually happen in the smallest spaces. And the power of design is that it can influence the smallest of a niche, but also the grandest of your campuses. It can influence an entire country if it is thoughtfully planned. And that's why we're going to build this together. I would love for our teams to stand up with your boards, one representative from each table. Please bring your drawing over up to the front, and let's put the city of ideas together. It's going to be a little bit of a puzzle. You're not going to have to talk, but you're going to have to figure out the puzzle. So. If you have to, press your Post-its down, they all have a particular order, so. So we're going to start with play. We start with play. That's
right?
That's not.
That's not right?
No. No. Can I? Let's go in sequence. We'll start with play.
Let's play.
Yeah. Okay. well, the buildings might have different neighbors, which I think we are okay with as designers. We want to get creative. But of course, this is everything. This is a collection of ideas that we have come together, from where we work, where we live, all these different environments. And now we come to a very, very important part of our synthesis where it's about our promise. What's the value of everything that we learned today if we are not able to make a commitment out of it? So in order for us to actually make the commitment in a very meaningful way, we wanted to do it digitally so that there's a way of capturing and coming back to it and actually even representing it as a collective commitment. So as you take your phones to get this QR code, before you do that, I wanted to share that this has to be a continuing story, right? It can't be something that finishes today. So we decided to put this together, which has this magnetic person trapped in the box. And they bend and they move. But what they're holding on to tightly is the QR code for the Brain Summit. just so that we'll remember today, but we'll also think about what happens tomorrow. And the reason why I can say I'm going to have an Oprah moment right now, because you get a box, and you get a box, and you get a box. Okay, and Lindsay maybe will help me distribute this later on. But the idea is that this little person actually escapes your box when you go home. And please find that spot where, I just love this person. My daughter and I have been having a lot of fun. But you can perch this person anywhere as a reminder. It actually tells that it might even glow in the dark, but as a reminder, and as you see it attached to this QR code, the important aspect is that once you go to this website, you are giving us a personal promise. This is something that I'm going to do to change my mental health, my brain health, to shift my course of action today. And then from a professional point of view, we've talked about it in all these environments, but this is now getting very real. Just give us a statement as to what your professional commitment is. And the third part is really the reason why we are today. It's all about partnerships. The reason why we had this action of building this city together is knowing very well that you can't just be huddled in a corner and want for change to happen when you've got to be the change, right? So if there are partnerships that are at play, if you are an architect, what partner do you need in order to set this in motion? If you are the CEO of a company today, or I see so many teachers here, what partnerships do you need? And through that, we can build this coalition. So please get your phones out. I'll bring the box to you, but get your phones out, and let's take a moment to fill that form from each one of us. Each day. So as you write and fill out these forms, our intention is that we would collate all of it. Of course, you could always access the form to remind yourself. You can definitely take a sticky. Now that we've compiled our artwork, feel free to take a speech bubble and actually even write it down, maybe in one of the speech bubbles, and put it in that box as a reminder. Because what we would like to do through this is to reach out and think about what that coalition needs to be, what partnerships need to come at play. We have some big ideas today. We had some pretty fundamental ideas, right? It was like a small nudge to get better. So this form is going to help us actually stay true to our commitments and maintain accountability. As we wrap up this part of our synthesis and get ready actually for our closing keynote, I wanted to share this thought as we go. You know, this is our life. Most of us have our foundations right? Like we know what is it that we value, what is it that we stand for, what is it that we want to be known for. But then our life gets really busy, and we start filling it up. And it comes in all shapes and sizes. You know, our roles and responsibilities comes in all shapes and sizes, and suddenly we are losing our margin. We are filling out our schedule. We don't know where the time has passed, and as we heard today, we finish our days sometimes not even knowing what we really accomplished. But today we talked about brain health, and today we talked about the fact that all it takes is a little bit of intention, and it's a little bit of margin, and that it's actually possible with just our existing resources. We talked about it even in terms of our health. You know, we don't want to reach a point of emergency where you're busting in the seams to actually make a difference. So if we apply everything that we learned today, and it's still just us, right? But we do just a little bit of a shuffle. And maybe we think through, and we say, let me go ahead and actually put these brain health strategies to work. Let me think through intentionally what I need to be doing to make a difference. Let me exercise and tap into the power of music, the power of art, and most importantly, the power of silence. And you can still get to do everything that you ever want to do in your same busy schedule. But suddenly, you have the space for wonder, for imagination, and joy. And in some way, you are actually creating a brain-healthy place because you've just unlocked hidden potential. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all these ideas and synthesizing.
Wasn't that fantastic? Let's have another round of applause for Ms. Sheba Ross, please. That is not easy. Okay, we are almost near the end, sadly, of this very exciting day. We're going to give you a 15-minute brain break. Feel free to take advantage of that. Then we'll come back in here.